A devastating discovery at the altar, Drew's sinister plan unveiled in General Hospital. In the latest dramatic turn of events on ABC's General Hospital, the much-anticipated wedding between Drew Cain and Willow Tate becomes the stage for one of the most shocking revelations in recent memory. What was meant to be Willow's pathway to freedom and custody of her children transforms into a nightmare when the truth about Drew's deception emerges in the most public and humiliating way possible. A marriage born from desperation, Willow Tate stands at a crossroads, facing serious charges for allegedly shooting Drew Cain, with her freedom hanging in the balance and her children living far from her custody. She grasps at what seems like the only lifeline available. When Drew proposes marriage for a second time, Willow sees opportunity rather than romance. She convinces herself that accepting his proposal could work in her legal defense. Perhaps the marital privilege between spouses would protect her from testifying against herself, keeping her secrets safe within the confines of marriage. "I don't have a choice," Willow confesses to herself in a moment of desperation, her voice trembling as the weight of her predicament crashes down upon her. Drew seizes the moment, his eyes gleaming with something far more sinister than love. "You're doing the right thing," Drew assures her, his hand gripping hers with an intensity that should have warned her of his true intentions. "We're going to get through this together." What Willow doesn't understand is that Drew has orchestrated everything down to the very last detail of this moment. Their engagement, the wedding plans, his promises, all of it is part of a carefully calculated scheme that extends far beyond protecting her legal status. The mastermind behind the shooting. The shocking truth that emerges is almost too unbelievable to comprehend. Drew shot himself. The very man who claimed to be her protector, her rock in the storm, orchestrated his own shooting in an elaborate and twisted plot. Michael Corinthos discovers this horrifying revelation and has been watching the events unfold, waiting for the perfect moment to expose the truth. Years of tension between Drew and Michael have built to this explosive moment. Drew's determination to win Willow back had no bounds. He needed her completely under his control, and he needed to ensure that Michael could never stand in the way of their future together. So he devised a scheme so sinister that it defies imagination, shooting himself and framing Willow in the process. The logic, twisted as it was, seemed foolproof to Drew. With Willow arrested and desperate, she would have no choice but to run toward him for salvation. And she did, exactly as he calculated. Michael's moment of truth. As the wedding ceremony begins, Michael sits in the chapel, watching the proceedings with an expression of barely contained fury. He has known the truth all along. He witnessed the shooting that night, saw Drew's manipulation play out in real time. Michael understands that his brother-in-law isn't just manipulative, he's dangerous, and he's playing Willow like a puppet on strings. The moment arrives when the officiant asks if anyone present objects to this union. Michael stands, his voice cutting through the silent chapel like a blade. "I object," Michael declares, his words heavy with the weight of what he's about to reveal. Because this entire wedding is built on a lie. Drew shot himself. He orchestrated his own shooting, framed Willow for it, and now he's marrying her to keep her silence. It's the ultimate act of control. The chapel erupts in gasps and whispers. Drew's face flushes red with anger and humiliation as his carefully constructed plan crumbles before his eyes. Willow's moment of reckoning. Willow's reaction is immediate and visceral. The realization that everything, every promise, every gesture of devotion, every moment of comfort was manufactured for Drew's benefit hits her like a physical blow. She stares at him, searching his face for any sign that Michael has made a mistake, that this is some misunderstanding. Is it true? Willow's voice is barely a whisper, but the room holds its breath waiting for his response. Drew's silence is more damning than any confession could be. His jaw tightens. His eyes flicker with something dangerous, not shame, not remorse, but irritation at being caught. "You don't understand what I've done for you," Drew finally speaks, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "Everything was for us, Willow, for our future together, for us." Willow's voice rises, her eyes blazing with fury. "You shot yourself. You made me believe I was a criminal. You've destroyed my life again. The wedding crumbles. In an act of defiance that shakes the entire room, Willow yanks off her engagement ring and throws it down on the altar steps. The metallic clang echoes through the chapel like a final nail in the coffin of their ill-fated union. I'm done, Willow states, her voice steady and resolute. I'm done with your manipulation, your lies, your schemes. You're not my savior, Drew. You're my nightmare. She turns away from him, walking down the aisle without looking back. The wedding dress, the flowers, the promises, all of it becomes meaningless in the face of devastating truth. Drew attempts to follow her, his voice desperate and pleading. Willow, please. You can't do this. You need me. No, Willow says, pausing at the chapel doors. I need to be free. And that starts right now. The aftermath of betrayal. Michael's revelation doesn't just expose Drew's monstrous deception. It fundamentally changes everything for Willow. With the truth revealed, her legal situation may actually improve. The case against her collapses without a credible victim, and the manipulation she suffered becomes evidence of her innocence. Drew, on the other hand, faces consequences far worse than a broken marriage. His calculated scheme, shooting himself, framing an innocent woman, orchestrating his own victimhood, exposes him as someone far more dangerous than previously understood. The charming congressman with political ambitions is revealed to be a man capable of extraordinary cruelty in the name of possession and control. As Willow walks away from the chapel, away from Drew, and away from the person she thought could save her, she takes the first real step toward genuine freedom. The irony is bittersweet. She sought to use marriage as a shield against her legal troubles, but it was the exposure of that very scheme that truly set her free. The wedding that was supposed to be her salvation becomes instead her liberation. And Drew, the man who orchestrated it all, is left alone with the ruins of his carefully constructed facade, watching the woman he claimed to love walk out of his life forever. Next, we will learn about the dark and twisted happenings unfolding at the legendary Cassadine fortress of Windermere, where shadows whisper secrets and every glance holds 1,000 unspoken threats. The ancestral estate that has stood upon Spoon Island for generations, bearing witness to countless acts of treachery, murder, and supernatural phenomena, now finds itself at the epicenter of what may prove to be its most diabolical chapter yet. While the stone walls have absorbed the echoes of Helena's machinations, Stavros' obsessions, and Valentin's complex legacy, nothing could prepare longtime viewers for the sinister convergence of characters currently taking residence within its haunted halls. The arrival of mysterious figures like Pascal and Lucas Jones signals not merely a changing of the guard, but potentially the implementation of a grand design that has been years in the making, connecting threads from Croatia to Port Charles in ways that will leave fans questioning every interaction they've witnessed over recent months. The island's population explosion has been nothing short of remarkable, with new faces appearing as if conjured from the mist that perpetually shrouds Spoon Island's rocky shores, each carrying their own hidden agendas and dangerous connections that threaten to destabilize the already fragile power balance of Port Charles. This influx of residents represents more than simple coincidence. It suggests a coordinated operation, a chess game where each piece has been carefully positioned to execute a specific purpose in a larger scheme that extends far beyond the boundaries of Windermere's imposing gates. The Cassadine estate, long a symbol of both opulence and menace, may indeed be experiencing its most ghoulish era. A statement that carries profound weight given the estate's infamous history of housing everything from cryogenically preserved would-be world conquerors to secret laboratories where humanity's boundaries were cruelly tested. Consider the generations of madness that have permeated these grounds. The original Cassadine patriarchs who built their fortune on blood and betrayal. The modern iterations who continued that legacy with scientific hubris. And now this new regime that seems to combine the worst elements of organized crime with the cold calculation of a corporate takeover. The figure currently presenting himself as the new master of the manor, Jenz Sidwell, cuts an intriguing silhouette against the stormy backdrop of Spoon Island, his diminutive stature belying the enormous shadow he casts across the lives of everyone unfortunate enough to cross his path. Jenz is every bit the diminutive dictator, a man whose whims and whines serve as precursors to violence, his voice carrying the petulant tone of someone accustomed to having their desires immediately gratified, while his hand carries a pistol that has already claimed its first victim within Windermere's walls. This week witnessed the shocking execution of Professor Dalton, a scholar whose expertise in anthropology and obscure languages made him an unlikely but dangerous resident of the estate, shot dead in the living room as expensive furnishings absorbed the spray of blood and the echo of gunfire reverberated through the stone corridors. The murder occurred before the horrified eyes of Britt Westburn, a woman no stranger to darkness herself, yet even she seemed genuinely shaken by the casual brutality with which Sidwell dispatched someone who had apparently outlived their usefulness. Jenz is fire and brimstone wrapped in bespoke suits and expensive cologne, a volatile combination of temperamental outbursts and cold-blooded decision-making that has transformed Windermere from a mere estate into a powder keg where every servant, guest, and prisoner understands that their continued existence depends on the capricious moods of this self-styled emperor. What makes Sidwell particularly dangerous is his apparent need for legitimacy, his desire to not merely control through fear, but to be accepted as a genuine successor to the Cassadine legacy, as if such a thing could be claimed through violence and intimidation rather than bloodline and dark birthright. He now maintains a personal butler whose primary function seems to be cleaning up the messes that Jenz leaves in his wake, a role that would be almost comical in its cliché if not for the deadly serious nature of the tasks involved. That would be Pascal, a minion who has demonstrated no hesitation in carrying out the dirtiest of work, a man whose expression never changes whether he's serving tea or disposing of evidence, suggesting a professional detachment that speaks 2 years of operating in the world's most dangerous circles. But something fundamental about this arrangement feels orchestrated rather than organic, a carefully choreographed dance where each participant knows their steps too well for this to be a newly formed partnership, leading us to suspect that Pascal represents far more than the sum of his visible parts. The question of who Pascal truly is has become the subject of intense speculation among General Hospital's most dedicated viewers, those who have learned to read between the lines of dialogue and study the subtle tells in a character's body language for hints of their true nature and hidden loyalties. Pascal was originally introduced as the formidable head of the criminal Five Poppies hotel operation in Croatia, a position that would have required not merely muscle and ruthlessness, but an intricate understanding of international law enforcement, political corruption, and the complex web of alliances that keep such enterprises functioning in the modern world. The Five Poppies itself suggests a network far more sophisticated than a simple criminal organization. The name implies 5 distinct operations or families, perhaps connected to the 5 petals of the poppy flower, which has long been associated with both medicinal properties and the opium trade, hinting at a global reach that extends into both legitimate pharmaceutical enterprises and the legal narcotics distribution. Now he materializes in Port Charles as Sidwell's right-hand man, a transition that makes little strategic sense on the surface. Why would a man who commanded his own empire willingly subordinate himself to the volatile whims of Jenz Sidwell, unless there were a larger game being played? This is precisely why Pascal could be the man, the elusive puppet master that GH fans have been speculating about for ages, the shadowy figure who appears to be running things from behind the scenes, pulling strings that connect seemingly unrelated events across continents and storylines. The man represents a unifying theory that would explain the mysterious resurgence of organized crime in Port Charles, the influx of dangerous newcomers, and the way certain characters seem to be making decisions that run counter to their established motivations. Pascal possesses a license to kill that extends beyond mere permission from an employer. He operates with the confidence of someone who knows that even if he were caught, the consequences would be minimal because his connections run so deep into the infrastructure of global power. He once placed a bomb on Britt Westburn, an act of such extreme prejudice that it revealed not merely a willingness to kill, but a flair for dramatic terrorism that suggests either personal vendetta or a demonstration of capabilities meant to intimidate multiple audiences simultaneously. The bomb itself was sophisticated, designed to be undetectable by standard security measures, indicating access to military-grade technology and expertise that far exceeds what a simple hotel manager would possess. His presence in Port Charles cannot be dismissed as mere coincidence, not when every move he makes seems calculated to advance an agenda that remains tantalizingly out of focus, like a photograph developed in reverse, revealing itself slowly through negative space. After Dalton's life was brutally extinguished, Pascal was the one entrusted with the delicate task of escorting Britt home, a responsibility that involved not merely transportation, but psychological manipulation, ensuring her silence through a combination of threats, implied consequences, and the kind of cold assurance that leaves no room for doubt about his sincerity. He has a certain icy vibe to his voice and manner that provides the perfect yin to Sidwell's fiery yang, a complementary contrast that feels almost too perfect for a partnership that's supposedly formed recently under duress. Where Jenz is explosive and unpredictable, Pascal is controlled and deliberate. Where Sidwell acts on impulse, Pascal executes with precision, suggesting a balance of power that may be more equal than their apparent roles would indicate. Dalton is a goner, that much is certain, but the deeper implications of his death ripple outward like concentric circles from a stone thrown into a still pond, disturbing secrets that had settled on the bottom of Port Charles's murky history. Pascal's warning to Britt that she is being watched and that there will not be a next opportunity for her to misbehave carries the weight of absolute certainty, delivered with the flat effect of someone stating a law of nature rather than making a threat. Britt Westburn, daughter of supervillains, former director of the General Hospital, and a woman who has navigated some of Port Charles's most treacherous waters, has finally encountered someone whose darkness may eclipse even her own extensive experience with the city's criminal element. The surveillance he promises is not the clumsy observation of amateur criminals, but the comprehensive monitoring that comes from access to advanced technology, inside information, and a network of informants embedded throughout the city's institutions, from the police department to the hospital's administrative offices. We believe him, not merely because his reputation precedes him, but because every action he has taken since arriving in Port Charles demonstrates a level of control that would be impossible without the infrastructure of a much larger organization behind him. So who is Pascal, really? He had broad authority in Croatia, operating with diplomatic immunity that suggested connections to Eastern European intelligence services, perhaps a former agent who went rogue, or a deep-cover operative whose criminal activities serve a larger political purpose that has yet to reveal itself. We don't believe for 1 minute that he is a mere tea-server at Windermere, though he performs that role with the same mechanical excellence he brings to every task, because everything about him suggests a man who has been trained to blend in while maintaining a separate set of priorities that have nothing to do with Jenz Sidwell's petty power plays. The question that should haunt every General Hospital viewer is this: if Pascal is indeed the man, what is his ultimate objective in Port Charles? And how many characters we believe we know are actually pieces he has already positioned on his board? Tell us, GH fans, have you thought about Pascal being the man we've all been trying to identify? Have you noticed the way certain characters have been acting strangely, making decisions that seem out of character, perhaps because they've been compromised or recruited into a network that Pascal controls? Consider the timing of recent events, the sudden departure of key WSB agents, the mysterious funding behind certain political campaigns in Port Charles, the unexplained resources that have allowed smaller criminal operations to flourish despite law enforcement's best efforts. All these threads could be woven together by a single master weaver, Someone who understands that true power doesn't announce itself with press conferences or criminal trials, but operates in the spaces between official narratives, in the gray areas where legality and illegality become meaningless distinctions. The Cassadine estate, with its history of international intrigue and its position as a symbol of both old money and new threats, provides the perfect headquarters for such an operation. A place where the world's most dangerous individuals can come and go under the cover of legitimate business, masked balls, and the kind of aristocratic privilege that makes law enforcement think twice before knocking on the door. As we look toward the coming weeks, the tension at Windermere will only intensify, with each scene adding another layer to the mystery of Pascal's true identity and the scope of his ambitions. Rit's survival now depends on her ability to play a game whose rules she doesn't fully understand, against opponents who have been playing it for decades. Every glance exchanged between Pascal and Sidwell, every seemingly innocent conversation that occurs within earshot of the estate's extensive surveillance system, every visitor who crosses the threshold could provide the clue that unravels the entire conspiracy. The ghosts of Windermere's past seem to be stirring, as if sensing that the estate is about to write its darkest chapter yet, one that could make Helena's reign look like a minor inconvenience in comparison. What secrets do the Cassadine tunnels still hold, and how might Pascal's operation be connected to discoveries yet to be made in those subterranean passages? The answers will determine not just the fate of those currently trapped on Spoon Island, but the future of Port Charles itself, as the battle lines are drawn between those who serve the man and those who don't yet realize they're already caught in his web.